Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the work session for the January 10th Council Work Session and Agenda Meeting. First item up is a discussion of grants and potential drainage project at Fairfield Subdivision. Eric? Yes, sir.
Afternoon, Council. I had sent the information to Lisa, and she got it for you. I forgot to send it to Joe. He's going to try and get it on the screens, but you have the handout that I sent. One of the issues that we have a lot of different things that happen in town when we get heavy rains. This is one of our critical points that we go and see every time we get rain, because we have subdivisions like Fairfield, and there's a couple of others that when they were developed in the late 90s, early 2000s, they grew up along Cowpen Creek. Well, at that time, that was not mapped on our FEMA maps. So there was no required elevation for the floor levels. It was not a formal flood zone. Well, when we got our April 2019 flood maps, that area became mapped. That is now a floodway, which is actually considered riverine channel with a flood fringe and A-zone that comes off. And if you go through the first picture I showed, or the map viewer shot, shows where the creek bed runs between the backs of those houses. The second is the aerial that kind of shows you how that lays out. Well, the third one is the actual flood zone. So now when we had our April maps come in, I think I counted 22 houses in that subdivision that are now legally in the floodplain. And those owners have called me. Now their HOA was involved when we got our preliminary maps. We had public meetings. We did a couple of things at night. They knew about this, and they knew this was coming. But federal law says if you have federally backed mortgage and your property's in a flood zone, you now have to buy flood insurance. And we have now 20-something owners in Fairfield that are having that. If you go through also, I took some photos for you. The photos that show the flooding are from our October 4th event. The second photo was taken actually last week to show you what the normal conditions are versus what they experienced during that October 4 rain event. The second group kind of shows, especially that is on Booth Road, and I'm talking about the one with the riprap at the base. That is at Booth Road, and what happens is that water comes from the west side underneath Booth Road through those fields, backs up, and then overflows behind those houses. And I was here during the April 2014 floods that we had, that historic flooding event. And one of the houses right there on the corner that line up against Booth Road, right on the backside of this gully, I stood with that owner while, the water rose right up to midpoint on her back windows. So she had flood damage. We had numerous houses there that have flood damage. So now the additional houses that are being built have a flood elevation because they're now in a flood zone. So their floor levels are up. But we have a lot of others that are what they term pre-firm. So they were built before the flood insurance rate maps were done. Flipping through and showing you the pictures of the before and after, that shows you where the majority of the water flows, how it flows. One of the things that we've talked about, and I've talked to Richard about this and to Jessica, one of the things that we can do possibly is go in and shape what is Cowpen Creek and the channel that runs between the houses on Lakeview or on Norman Lane and Fairfax. If you look, it's just a very shallow, uneven channel. One of the things that we could potentially see about doing is going in and actually shaping that to help the water flow through there, armoring it with some riprap and helping against scour. The goal of that is to have a flood study done that if we did that and we clean that area up, could we lower the flood waters to the point where they can then remove those houses from the floodplain? That is a mitigation project. Those are the kind of things that FEMA looks for. Anything you can do to remove houses in a floodplain or to elevate the houses in the floodplain. So in looking at this, one of the things that what we're actually going to request of the City Council to consider is we have a verbal estimate from a hydrologic engineer as to what it would take to do a flood study in that area, how and if it's possible, to shape that channel and lower the flood elevations on the A zones and help remove those homes from the flood zone. Every year there are mitigation grants that come in, FMA grants. This one, we have another grant that's a possibility, but in order to have the best opportunity at getting the money to do the physical work, having committed and having the city having committed to spend some money to do the study and showing that this will actually work would tremendously increase our chances to be able to get the grant to do the work. And I'm going to ask, Richard, do we recall what the approximate cost of the physical work would be, or do we even have a ballpark? You know.
We've done two things. The professional service quote for the hydrological study and the proposed design was 25, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And then what did I do? And about 516 for the construction, which would go for the grant, which would be a 2575.
Right.
The grant paying 75.
Right. So the question is, you know, we would request that the council consider providing the money to actually do the flood study, which is the 25,000. And then if we can prove, based on that, which we feel fairly confident that we can prove, that we can lower the base flood elevations and remove close to 20 houses from the floodplain, then having that information going for a grant either in this cycle or in the 2023 cycle to request the money to physically do the work. If we tried to do grants both ways, it would turn into a 2-year process. The first one, they would want to see the engineering that it's actually going to work, and then the following year, then they would consider the money to actually do the work. Doing it this way, you know, the city has shown good faith. They have some effort into it to have the study done, and we would be able to prove to them, yes, if we are able to get this grant, we can do it. Flood mitigation is something that they push very, very hard. So I would, depending on how much money is released and what some of the other applications are from the other jurisdictions, I would hope we would have a decent shot at being able to do this. I know that's been high on a lot of the rankings we've had, was flood mitigation when we've had these grant applications. So.
Have the citizens that have been notified, obviously, that they're now in a flood zone? I'm assuming they've gone out and obtained flood insurance at this point?
They have.
Have you gotten any feedback from them as far as what that premium is per year? Just out of curiosity.
The premiums vary based on what the elevation of your floor is. The higher the floor elevation above the base flood, the lower the premiums. It's going to vary from house to house depending on how it was built at the time. Did the builder, were they proactive, and did they get that floor elevation up? And the higher they are above, the better they are. But you know, I think others can tell you, anytime we have any kind of significant flooding, this is an area we get a huge number of calls about. You know, anytime we get a heavy rain, there's about 5 hot spots that they're the first ones I go check, and this one's on the list. I want to go see what's happening in there. It's just, it's an issue. And it's not really due to anybody in particular. I mean, it's just something that happened in the late 90s, and we've got others that are along that Cowpen Creek area and that watershed that kind of have some of the same issues, but they don't see, typically those other areas don't see this kind of volume of water. Yeah, this is the most severe, what I feel is the most severe portion of that.
Okay. I mean, anything we can do, I think, to help our citizens, we certainly want to do. Flood insurance is not terribly expensive overall, so I would want to make sure that there's a cap. You know, if it's going to cost $500,000 to remove 20 houses from that, we're looking at 104,000 of that, or roughly 20% match. I would just want to make sure that we weren't going to wind up with a $600,000 or $700,000 bill, but we're stuck with getting the 400, and now we're out of pocket for 300,000.
Sure.
And been better off not pursuing that. So
Okay.
I would like to hear a little more about that. Council, do y'all have any questions about the?
Yeah, I've got 1,000
Study.
questions about
Fire
this.
away.
Sure.
Number one, why is it incumbent upon government to take care of everybody's problem? Why, we didn't develop it, we didn't build the houses there, we didn't cause the flooding. Why now should we be expected to spend our money on these 20 homes to prevent them from flooding if we are not the cause? You said yourself, we're not the cause, it was just something that happened. Well, in this country, it's getting really bad now. The federal government thinks they have to pay for everybody's problem. Anytime anybody has a problem, they got to fix it. Why should we fix it? Why can't the developer fix it? Why can't the homeowner fix it? Let me tell you what I'm worried about. You go in there and you do these 20 homes, you got 500 homes right behind it that say they have the same problem. That I would never build a house and expect government to come fix my problem if I found out later it flooded. Not unless the government forced me to build my house there and told me I had to live there. That's my first problem with it. Secondly, if we go in there and do this work, we are now responsible for everything upstream and downstream. Anytime a house floods, we've touched this, they're going to come to us and say, seek relief. That's what happens with government. Same thing with the bluff falling in. Hey, we didn't tell you to build your house on a bluff. When are we going to stop doling out money to fix property owners' problems because they choose to live there? When does it end? Because there is no end in Fairhope. There's flooding, we have a lot of rain, we have a lot of erosion. That's a natural course of nature. Things build up, they erode. I'm concerned that this is the tip of the iceberg, and and I'm not saying no, but I have a lot of concerns over where this leads and what comes after that. Just because we're offered money doesn't always mean we have to take it.
Understood. What has prompted this, number one, is, and I would be stunned if any of you have not heard from the people in this subdivision during this time. If you haven't, then...
It's a problem. It sounds callous, but we can't fix everything.
Understood. The whole reason for this is to bring it before you. If this is something the council chooses not to do or feels that it is not in the city's best interest, then absolutely, that is your decision. That's why it's being brought before you. The purpose of doing this is to try to identify an issue, and we have issues in town. I know you want to know about where our issues are in town and what are potential fixes. That's what this is.
Is this we have a issue?
Does the city have an issue?
Yeah, does the city have an issue? Did we cause this issue?
No, we did not.
Cause the issue, but if you look at the pictures of the water going over the road, I mean, that becomes a city issue or county, it becomes a transportation issue.
In your opinion?
Yeah.
Well,
You washed out that road, it just became a city issue.
So this is simply an opportunity that we may possibly have to be able to do some work and clear up an issue if this is something that you feel is not in the
Do
county.
we know that retention pond has been maintained?
It's not, the issue's not the retention pond.
Okay,
Retention pond is
It hasn't filled up
fine.
with silt by
Yeah.
another 5 feet over the last 20 years?
It's not the retention pond. The retention pond outflow's fine. We have not had an issue, to my knowledge,
Well, it
of
may
the
not be the
retention
outflow,
ponds.
it may be the volume of that, because you cut grass in there and you let vegetation grow in there for 20 years, the sediments fall to the bottom.
Sure.
If it's not maintained, the bottom is coming up, reducing the volume
Yeah.
significantly.
The bigger issue that we see or that we think can be fixed is the uneven shaping of the creek channel behind these houses. There's not a lot of room for that water to flow. It's a very tight V shape. Being able to go in and shape it as a more conducive drainage ditch to carry that more than anything, we feel would lower the level of the water that's actually going almost into them. We actually had in that, it wasn't October, but it was one previous to that, on Norman Lane. We had 2 houses that did flood. So this is this is something that we have heard about. I know the mayor's heard about it, Lisa's heard about it, Richard's heard about it. So this is something that we wanted to bring before you to consider as to something we can do to concerns that our citizens have.
Yeah.
If it's not in our interest, then it's not in our interest.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions, or I guess issues that I have. Number one, I think I have seen this, and I've seen pictures and videos of that October long before this.
Yes, sir.
And it's a lot. I mean, it's an issue. And so to kind of address some of Jack's concerns and then something Jimmy brought up. You know, if we become aware of a safety issue within the city that the city has some control over, I think we have some obligation to remedy that. And if this is a safety issue that we've identified, then especially if it pertains to any city property, we have some obligation there. But I do share what Jack's saying is if it's not an obligation.
Sure.
And we step in, then have we then obligated ourselves after the fact by making any modifications to
Right.
it? And that would kind of be where I wanted to, you know, if it's a safety issue that we can address on city property that we are already responsible for,
Okay.
I think that's something we have to do. But if it's not, and we step into those shoes, have we then put ourselves on the hook? And I'm concerned that maybe we, you
Okay.
know,
And that's one thing,
Yeah.
please note too, on that aerial, from the tax map, there is not city, and I'll be very straightforward, there is not city property behind these houses. There is a drainage way, but if you look, which is unusual for the way the thing is platted, there is not an easement, a drainage easement that is on the plat that is maintained by the POA in this subdivision. The properties meet at the center line of the creek from either side. So in talking with some of the folks from Fairfield, even if this were to happen, one of the things they would have to do is get written agreements from each of those property owners whose property goes all the way to the center line of the creek, because the work that would be done on the backside of what is the tail end of their property. Now, physically, if you look at it, both groups, both streets have pulled their fences back. So they've got a clear channel back there that are not fenced in. But legally, the properties go and join and meet just at the center line of the creek bed.
Eric, if you went in and got a hold harmless agreement, you know, for those property owners, it still hasn't addressed every property upstream and downstream of
Sure.
that, and those that may come in the future as well.
No, understood. I
That's
do.
That's just really what
And-
worries me about
sure,
that.
no.
I know that in the past, we've touched some drainage basins in this town
Mm-hmm.
years ago that became our problem once we touched it.
Right.
And I want to avoid that situation.
No, fully understand, and if that's something from a legal standpoint or from a liability standpoint that we feel is not in the city's best interest, that's fine. I can tell you, I know I have personally spoken to almost 24 people in that subdivision. Richard gets calls. Anybody who will pick up a phone generally gets a call. So this is something that we hear about a lot, and we just wanted to bring this as an option if this is something we feel we want to do.
If we react to every complaint we get, when we have flooding in an area that receives 65 inches a year, I think that we would spend billions of dollars trying to solve, you know, everyone's issue with the 500-year rainfalls
Certainly.
that we get. And then I wonder, you know, the April 2014 flood, I don't think there's enough money in Alabama to fix the problems created.
No.
And I wonder if this is not another one of those situations where it just happened and doesn't matter how much money you throw at the problem, there's still going to be a problem.
No, I understand.
And that's all, I'm just asking these really tough questions.
Sure. Yeah.
Once again, I'm saying these questions have to be answered, in my opinion.
Well, I agree, and like I said, this is not the only subdivision through the years that has grown up along the Cowpen Creek Basin. There's others. So, and not just Cowpen Creek. I mean, we had a lot of our inland dry creek beds that flood in the rains are now mapped, which were not previously to the April 19 maps. So that's something comprehensively throughout the city that, you know, we may want to look at. We may want to say, well, I don't know if that's something we want to get into. But I do want to make sure you're concerned. That is not city property in any way. So if that work were to be done, it would be done through a grant by, I'm assuming, a private contractor doing work on each individual owner's section of that creek bed.
Yeah. But Eric, you are exactly right, and the rest of the staff in the room, this is exactly the kind of stuff that we do want to hear and need to hear, because if there are issues that maybe we hear about sort of on the street and maybe we don't, if there are issues that maybe there is a city fix for that we can either help with or assist with in whatever it is that we do, this is, I mean, I know we're asking you some tough things, kind
No,
of putting
that's
you on the
fine.
spot, but that's what we need to hear. I mean,
Sure.
we do need this sort of report to
Absolutely.
figure out whether
Well-
it's something we can help
Well,
with.
to a large degree, we're your boots on the ground. And so we're the ones that hear it, we're the ones that meet with the folks, we're the ones that talk to them about it, and, you know, that's part of our job, is to make sure the mayor
And you'd
knows
be-
about it, and make sure you know about
And
it.
we
We'd be the one
appreciate that.
responsible for fixing it if we decided to implement it.
Fair
So
enough.
That's,
And we just need to know that we've got a finite amount of resources, so whatever issues are out there that need to be fixed, bring them to us, and
Okay.
and we will address what we can, and I may get with you after just to follow up on this and bring something back to the council, just float
Yeah.
it by y'all, we get a little more information, get some of those questions answered.
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
All the residents of Fairfield, and I know you and I have talked about this before, are they willing to contribute at all?
We need to find out what that contribution would be. I mean, this is more, do we want to, if for some reason if we decided to do the study and it would not lower the base flood elevations enough to remove those houses from the floodplain,
Right.
our chances of getting a grant aren't going to be good. Because that's their whole focus and goal for FEMA is to, when it comes to flood mitigation, is getting those structures out of the flood zone, either elevating them or doing site work around them to lower the BFE. So we don't know for a fact that that's going to happen. I think we, feel like it's a very good possibility, but we could get a
Yeah.
study back and maybe not.
Eric, can we spend $25,000 for the study? Or is the grant would probably be awarded to somebody else, or the money would be spent elsewhere if we waited to see what the results of that study was?
What'll happen is, when you have these kind of grant applications, each of the jurisdictions submit the projects that they want to ask for money for. Those are then ranked by the body of the representatives on that committee. And then everybody turns in their rankings. Typically, you've got a set amount of money that's available. Everybody will submit what their projects are. They're ranked, and then they're sent to AMEA. Usually, the FEMA grants are channeled through AMEA. So there's no guarantee that it would be approved by the group. I mean, if we get a pot of $2 million and we're asking for $500,000, and I don't know that would happen or not. I know the chances would be better if you can prove that you can remove 20 houses from the floodplain.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That'd be really valuable information.
Sure.
To know before, because I know they don't like you to submit a grant application, get awarded the grant, and then deny it.
Well, that's part of the.
It's legal to do that, but
Sure.
they frown upon that.
Well, that's part of the question is that, by asking to consider doing the study, that'll tell us if this would succeed in what we're trying to do in the first place before you ever go for the grant.
Could that study, I guess we could study anything for the proper amount of money, but it would be nice if that study could include, to our concerns, what potential effects it would have upstream and downstream, and not just in that finite area. See,
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing that I like, that would make me feel much better about it.
Not just helping 20 houses.
Yeah, not just helping 20, but the potential mitigation to further claims, further liabilities in the future.
And this is John Curry of Hydro Solutions, this proposal, and he's done all the major watershed studies for the county. So he will model the whole reach, because I know there's also been at least some discussion about the property we own that is south of there, about a potential reservoir one day, and that could be included in the study to look at how it would help and that kind of thing. So it would be the whole reach of the stream, from the top of the watershed to its terminus. So
Yeah,
it would be-
okay.
But, and it's called a geisha model, it's a gridded surface area model, so then you can take and you study it in its current state and show what's happened for a typical storm event, an atypical incidence event, and then what you do is then you can idealize that channel and do those improvements, and then model it again, and it demonstrates, yes, you bring the base flood elevation down to this, or no, it doesn't, or you
Yeah.
look at this and that. So that it will be a comprehensive watershed model, and then, and the nice thing is Geisha is a Corps of Engineer modeling software, so the part of the deliverables, we'll get that model, and we're able to play with that as well.
I just know if you eliminate a choke in one location, and that gets to the next choke pretty quick, you may have another situation on your hands.
Well, when you have all that property that runs back behind the Estrahan,
Yes.
that comes down across Booth, or
13, yeah. No, Booth, Booth.
Comes across Booth Road, because that was flooded out before,
Right.
that bridge. And then it comes back through Fairfield Place, and then I guess eventually ends up somewhere over there on 44. That's the other thing is, I mean.
Yeah, we don't want to make our soccer fields a ski lake.
Yeah, there
So-
are
yeah.
possibly two roads that are potentially could be blown out by that watershed too. And that's another thing that you worry about is just traffic and storms and emergency personnel and all that kind of stuff. 'Cause, I mean, it could be a big problem.
Yeah, yeah, you know, once again, though, you may be solving a problem, like my mom. My mom always wanted a big house with a lot of bedrooms. I said, Mom, we would show up once every 2 years. You use it, you know, one night out every 2 years. Are you designing something for the
Kinda like my dining
1%, you know?
Understood.
room.
Okay.
Councilman
I have a
Boone?
question.
Yes, sir.
This whole basis starts with the study, is that correct?
Correct.
So if the study's done and it says no, somebody just wasted $25,000.
That is true.
What I would suggest, if these people are serious about this, they pony up the $25,000, get the study done, and now let's look at it.
I'll be happy to tell them that.
I mean, that, to me, I don't want the city to put up this money on something doesn't, when I say it doesn't affect us, going on what Jack said, 'cause I do agree with that. I'm more worried about the legal ramifications. You get an April event, what we had in 14, I don't care what study they
No,
got.
I
don't care what they
understand,
got. Somebody's gonna get flooded. All these people, because we told them they don't have to have flood insurance because we lowered it, and it gets flooded, they're gonna be looking at us.
Right.
And I like to see all that, but my point is, if all this basis is started through a study, it's gonna cost 25 grand, I think they need to have some skin in the game. If they're that interested in the city doing something, let's see what they're interested in doing.
Okay. Well, we can talk about, if you would like, we can get together and you tell me what you would like for me to talk to them about, funding the whole thing, funding part of it, whatever you want to do. And I'll be happy to go meet with them and see what they have to say.
Thank you, Eric.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
you coming.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the hold harmless?
Yeah, since we're on topic, you might as well go ahead and.
All right, item
Bring
number
that up.
2, and I have requested, I talked to Council President, asked him to help me walk this on. Many of you are probably aware, we have a couple of houses that are being built at the end of Pecan, right there off of South Mobile Street. For years, those two lots were kind of a low point, kind of almost a default water area for the houses in there. Well, they were platted lots of record. You know, they had a right to build, but one of the things we talked about with the home builder was, you know, going in and changing the topography of the lot so you can build, and taking up where a lot of water used to go. We wanted the builder to take some remedial measures and do some on-site detention, which, you know, we have a lot of those kind of things that are popping up in the fruit and nut area, where you're smaller lot, building a lot of house, a lot of concrete. So we've had several instances where we've had homeowners put, generally we do either rain gardens or bioretention, tell them to do that on their property because it's maintainable. And that came up with the builder, so they're coming down to the end of it. One of her concerns is we have an unopened alley, 20-foot wide alley back there that does not tie to North Mobile or South Mobile. It just dies right into the back of two of those lots. We had told the builder, let's do the bioretention on the 20-foot alley, because that's part of why we keep those alleys and we don't vacate them, is to be able to do some kind of drainage work and have areas to do these kind of improvements. She would do the work. Richard provided a design of what the city would like to see done in that area. We would inspect it and then clear it once the work was finished. Her concern was doing this work on city property. She was concerned about potential liability. So I had talked to Marcus and others, and we put together a hold harmless certification for her that basically the hold harmless, and you can read the language in it, but what it essentially says is she is held harmless from any effects that occur from the design that we gave them to put in. If they do what we specified that they needed to do, then they would be held harmless if, for some reason, that area of bioretention did not work adequately. That's not going to be their problem. So that's what this is. We handle hold harmless agreements all the time in the building department. That happens with COs and with requirements. Things come down and we have a hold harmless that we have the homeowner or the contractor signed. This one's a little different because the city will be holding the contractor harmless for the work that we are requiring them to do on city property. But it will be done to the city's design and specifications and inspected and verified by us.
And basically, if this were not on that city right away, it wouldn't be coming before.
That
the
is
council.
correct. If it was not on that alleyway, it would not be coming before you, but putting it on that city alleyway provides more room to do the work, and it helps positively affect, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 surrounding property owners that I have heard from throughout the course of this project, and maybe others have heard from them as well. We would like, this will have a remedial measure to try to help solve what is an issue in that area.
And Richard's designed it, and we would sign off on it before accepting that the work was done properly or looks,
It's handled like any right-of-way
Yeah.
permit, meaning that they've got permitted work, they complete it, we inspect it, accept it, and they're released. So-
got it.
So I don't have a problem with them, us holding them harmless. But what about it's the same situation that we just talked about. Are they gonna sign off on something saying as soon as that 2024 flood map that comes out puts them in the floodplain, are they gonna hold us harmless? Are they
No,
gonna
this
come
is-
back and want a hazard mitigation grant to raise their house or lower the
Sure.
creek or?
This is actually better because it goes back to your
Are the
concern about
gullies
the last
falling in,
one.
So we gotta pay them for that.
Because this is actually on city property, and this is not on their private property. And the only thing that is being held harmless is we are prescribing a home builder a method and a requirement that they are to do this on city property. And being fair, I understand their concern. You
I
know,
understand their concerns. too.
so-
There's still other concerns for future, for
Sure.
any property that's built on these so-called, that back up to a gully. Because as soon as their backyard starts washing away, guess who they're gonna call to fix it?
Well, I understand that happens now.
But
I
in
mean,
this
we
case,
deal with
the
that now.
houses are complete.
They are.
essentially.
She's a month away, or actually less than a
I
month
think
away
a week
from
or
wanting
two
to get
away
in
or
and,
something, so-
yeah. She wants to get in there and get the work done so
I
that
understand.
while she's got access, and this was a concern, and we felt it was legitimate, and so we tried to work something up that would help alleviate that
And
concern.
that was the reason for walking this on. the
Yes,
And
sir.
I think it's necessary, and I agree with what you're saying. I'm
Yes,
just
sir.
illustrating the point that it's this kind of construction in these kind of areas that people continue to come back in the future and complain that something's going on with their property, although they choose to build there.
Right. And that's a
So
conversation.
what can we do to mitigate that in the future?
I don't know that you can. I mean,
Well, you
one.
can't get them to hold us harmless forever?
Yeah, I mean,
Or-
we get hold harmless agreements from folks who do things on their property that we look at and we evaluate that puts them at jeopardy. And they're doing things that we don't necessarily have a rule saying they can't, but it's not a good idea. So that's part of what we handle in the building department all the time. We have some stock hold harmlesses to address those issues. If you're going to do this, it's your issue, don't come back on us. And we do it all the time.
All right. In the interest of moving along,
Yes.
and thank you very much, Eric.
Yes,
but
sir.
A nice segue into item number 2 on the work session agenda, and this is discussion of the gully behind 50 Fairhope Avenue,
Thank you, and it seems to be a continuing theme tonight.
doesn't it?
I do want to share with the council, because it is amazing that in our development code, what a difference 20 years make. Today, if somebody's going to develop a subdivision and there's a channel through it, not only do we have a requirement that you set back in a reserved common area 50 foot on each side of the center line of the channel, and then if you add in that the rear setback on a typical subdivision lot's anywhere from 30 to 35 feet, well, if Fairfield Place had been built to today's standard, those homes would be approximately 80 to 85 feet from the center line of that channel. And yeah, they'd have backyard flooding, but they wouldn't have house flooding. And so we as an entity have learned from mistakes or sins of the past, and I think we have gotten better. And you get a lot of developers get real mad at you that all of a sudden, what do you mean I can't use that 100-foot swath through the middle of my development? Well, there's a good reason why you shouldn't build anything there, because that's called a floodplain, and it floods.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a good point.
But unfortunately, we have those inheritances, and just as on Pecan that we just discussed, Those lots were platted probably 100 years ago. So we, there was no consideration of rules at that time. Council, this is at least a little better request than what we talked about on the first item. I don't know if you know Mr. Shuney, but Bob Shuney is an owner and a majority owner of the condominium complex at 50 Fairhope Avenue, which abuts on the backside of Stack Gully, right there at the intersection of South Mobile Street, Fairhope Avenue, and he has been a very active owner and majority owner of the POA there. And to give you a little bit of history, back in 2008, that gully was having some challenges, probably from some of those flood events that we had in that era. And there was an NRCS project to stabilize that gully from where it kind of originates up towards Bayview. And that project ended right before it got to the condominium complex there at 50 Fairhope Avenue. Well, jump ahead 13 years, they have continued to suffer a good bit of bluff erosion. It has been exacerbated by the fact that during Hurricane Sally, there were several large trees that were overturned on that embankment that dislodged the root balls and again, led to further slope erosion and sloughing. Mr. Shuney has sat down and met with the mayor and myself and has made an interesting proposal. He would like to continue on that project that ended at their east property line and stabilize the complete face as it gets all the way back to South Mobile Street. And his proposal is that he would handle everything, but he would like to do a cost sharing, 50-50 across the board. He has a quote for the engineering of $17,200, and he has a back of the envelope construction cost of about $180,000. I think he's low on that, knowing what bid prices has been. But his proposal, he would like for us to bring forth a consideration to share in half of the engineering of the design. And then his comment and his proposal was that after completion of the engineering work, we can jointly arrive at the best method to move forward on the project with a continuation of the cost-sharing approach. And, it was a very reasonable request, and the mayor said, let's bring it to council and see if you'd be willing to entertain it. And in this case, this is a property owners association that at least has acknowledged that they're in for 50 cents on the dollar if we can make this project go forward. And he was very adamant he would manage the whole thing. That gets a little complicated on a legal standpoint. It would require that much like we did with the Haley project, is that we deemed it to be in the best interest of the community, and that upon receipts, we would reimburse up to 50 cents on the dollar for the various components of the project, and that would require Marcus to get involved. On the inverse, we could reverse that. It becomes a public work project and they pay 50%, and we can handle it both ways. It's, in my world, it's a lot easier and a lot quicker when you have a partner who's going to take care of it and you're just a financial contributor, but that'll be a decision for a future day if you're willing to entertain his proposal. And I think Mr. Shuney's out of town this week, so he would have been here, and he's a very big advocate for fixing things and doing things right. So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
And I did take a tour of the project with him and walked through there, and I know he's out of town, maybe out of the country right now, but I think it's a reasonable request. But just going back a little bit, another couple of significant rains could do a lot of damage to that area of their property that's the closest to the gully, and as you said, the prior project stops just a little bit short of addressing their immediate concerns. So, how do you feel about the cost sharing and your thoughts? I know it's different than the first proposal we heard from, but again, I know to some of the comments Councilman Burrell made earlier, is it a city issue?
Well, and that's kind of, that's always a tough one. Just so you know, we own that property. I think that was conveyed back in the 30s with the single tax, and when we got the municipal pier area and North Beach and South Beach, that is deeded property that we own. And so, when you look at it in a purely clinical way, that you have a entity that is willing to share 50 cents on the dollar to permanently, and these systems have demonstrated that it's a pretty, I think in our lifetime it's permanent. Maybe the council in 50, 75 years may have to readdress some maintenance or repair on it, but I don't think in our lifetimes, in our careers, we're going to have, if we do this type of work, that MSE or a gabion wall system, that we ever revisit it. And that's pretty good public works in my view. So from just a clinical laboratory thing, anytime that you can, one, stabilize and fix city property that has a side benefit of protecting private property, you're usually, the part that you worry about is that if there is a catastrophic failure and there's a history of folks, documenting that they've tried so hard to work with the entity to address that, no offense to Marcus's career, vocation, but I would rather pay a contractor to fix a problem than a lawyer to litigate the problem. So that's my.
I take some offense to that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well,
Money out of your pocket.
council, do y'all have any questions for Richard?
Richard, you answered my major question, which was, is this city-owned property? And if it is, I think I agree with everything you just said, which is, again, notice an opportunity to take some measure to correct a future problem is much better than reacting and responding once the problem's already occurred. And having someone willing at this point to pay half of the cost. Now, they're getting their own benefit from it, which is obviously why they're paying. But yeah, I think this is a potentially a good opportunity for us.
And I will say, after meeting with Mr. Sheeney, he's willing to reimburse us for the work or let us reimburse him after the fact. We did talk about the fact that, when he first brought this up, he just missed the budget cycle. Would be great to pay for it even later in the next cycle, and he acted like that might be fine for him to front it and work something out and then have us pay him and put it in the next budget cycle, but that might not be very realistic. I don't know what the issues around that would be.
Yeah, he seems very easy to work with.
He does.
It's a cooperative partnership as being an adverse partnership, which is kind of nice. So.
Right. Well, just from a logistical standpoint, I think from maybe a cost savings position, it would probably be better if we ran the project and he contributed, because then we'd have a better handle on controlling and managing the cost. However, I know that we are already working on so many projects, being able to expend the manpower to take on another project like this in the short term or any near future might be difficult, but that's.
I would be in favor, honestly, if we can kind of oversee it and sign off on it. I'd be in favor of letting him front it and hire the right person to manage it so that y'all don't have to take that project on.
Well, my question is that legal, though? Can you even participate in that without it going through the bid process, though?
Well, and that will ultimately be a Marcus question to answer. I believe that if you deem it in the public good and we do it through a right-of-way permitting and license or a cooperative maintenance agreement, meaning y'all blessed it, and that is that whoever he hires has to meet our development and design standards and present everything to be reviewed and approved. It's to me, it's not really terribly different other than the cost sharing, which we'd have to figure, Marcus would have to figure that out. Just like when Mac Walcott opened up Pensacola Avenue, we licensed him to go in there and build a roadway and develop on a piece of city property that then we accepted those improvements after, but he had to meet an engineering standard and everything else. So the mechanics of doing it is not difficult. It is always making sure you don't run afoul of any type of public bid law with the funding. And if the worst case, council, to expedite and control cost, there's nothing that says that he cannot engage the engineering and have his cost applied toward, you know, the project cost. And that way he can move faster that way than we are, because we have a process that is not cumbersome, but it requires certain steps. And in this state, there would be no harm or foul if somebody came up with stamped and sealed engineering drawings and said, I'm providing this to you to go out to bid. Those drawings just have to meet the engineering standards of the state. So there would be no harm or foul there, I don't think, so.
So, I have a few
Go
more
ahead,
questions for
Councilman.
Richard.
Mayor? go
I
ahead.
think we've already had this conversation one other time when we talked about dredging. I think depending on the cost of the project, and from what I understand, it's probably close to $100,000 is a good estimate, correct?
I think
per half, about 200,000.
it's
Okay.
probably double that,
Okay,
yes.
200,000, then, I mean, it's clearly over the bid limit, and it's clearly over the $50,000, so I don't think we have a choice but to manage that project. The gentleman who, he's got to do the engineering, and I think the one that he would like to do the work is the same person who did the work before on the NRCS project, because we had to stop short for monetary reasons before. So half that project was done, but not the complete project. So, I mean, you know, we've stopped ourselves before when we were going to partner with the yacht club on the dredging. So I do think this is another example of that, where it would have to, because we're using city dollars, we would have to bid it.
And
We would
manage it.
need to manage it, and then, and it is on city property.
So, Richard, back to some points that Councilman Robinson made, that this does benefit City of Fairhope property. Because as you were at first explaining it to me, I didn't think it was a very good deal for the city to spend 50 cents on a dollar to improve private property, and didn't think we should. But if it is improving our own property, what's the danger to our property there? Give me a vision. There's no graphics, there's nothing in here so that I can see what exactly we're talking about. So are we talking, is there a lot of city land that we're losing that we need to maintain for various reasons, or are we spending $100,000 really to shore up private property?
The landing question now is almost close to a vertical face, meaning that when you stand at the backyard of 50 Fairhope and look down, if you took one step, it would be about 32 feet before you got to the next step. And it's not quite vertical, but it's steeper than one-to-one.
But that's his property. What about our property?
No.
And I'll point to pictures in the archives at the museum where all the kids are standing in a bluff, and it's vertical, and they're all, you've seen that one?
Yes.
Everybody's familiar with that photo. So it's been like that, so.
I no doubt that it has, and based upon the corner, he has his property corners marked, but what's happening is our property is sloughing, leaving that slope and coming into his property, okay? So that is the concern, is that unchecked, eventually it could undermine the improvements, and that is, I think, a historic building that's been here for quite a while. So, again, we are losing property.
Where
but
is 50 Fairhope? Where is that?
It's Mason, JC, it's that condo.
The white condos.
Kind of overlooks the pier.
It's before you go down the hill.
Okay, yeah, okay.
All right.
I think the risk that we have is the gully is obviously ours.
Right.
It's going to impact our personal property because it's going to start falling in, and there's already a sinkhole.
But let's just take something on the bay. And the bay, let's just say the bluff starts receding. And let's say we had a park next to some property and it just started receding, just naturally receding, and starts impinging on the properties on either side of it. Can we really stop that? Are we expected to stop that forever, or? I'm looking, once again, the decisions that we make now are going to affect us for potentially hundreds of properties over the next 100 years.
There's a case that out of Spanish Fort dealing with those bluffs over there, and I'd kind of like to get an answer to that question. I'd like to kind of get an idea, review that. It's been years since I've done it. But Spanish Fort did undertake an obligation to fix some drainage and do some things on that bluff before they continued operation.
Yeah, but hadn't touched that though? Well, that goes back to that question. Once you touch it, you own it. And then if you don't touch it,
But we've already,
Well, if you're taking our argument, we've already touched this one.
Yeah, you
we
remember
did half
that?
the project and not all
And this is a particular tough one, Councilman, in the sense is that if you look at that portion of Stack Gully, and just about every bit of drainage of downtown that is in that watershed that breaks falling toward the west eventually is routed to there. All of those inlets along Fairhope Avenue actually drop into a box just past Skip Jones' new development and discharge into the gully. And so, you know, there's no doubt that that gully is very important to our drainage system, and some of that action of that flow at the bottom is eroding the toe of that bluff, and when you erode the toe of the bluff, you start getting that sloughing going up the bluff. So, and I mean, it's that action has been occurring for time immemorial. There's no doubt about it. The reason those gullies were there before there was Fairhope, and there was a reason those gullies formed, because that's where water flowed. But again, it's one of those things is that once you have properties developed and built, right, wrong, or indifferent, then there becomes a little different emphasis on, you know, how are you maintaining those features to protect those private properties.
Let me ask you one last question then. If you were driving around going, just performing your daily duties as Public Works Director, would you look at this spot and one day say to it doesn't matter when it happens, would you look at that and say, we really need to shore that up? Or are we reacting to somebody else coming to us wanting money to fix a problem? So to me, if it needs to be done if in your mind, the back of your mind, one day and granted, you may not have paid much attention to this because there's how many lots in the city, 1 trillion. You can't look at everything all the time, but would that have been something that caught your attention and said, one day that's going to have to be addressed?
And that's a hard question to answer. I tend to get a little bit blinders on. I'm looking at our improved public infrastructure, and when I see something threatening it, that becomes a very important thing to address right away, because whether it's a roadway that is used by all or whatever, it always gets tough when you get to a kind of a micro problem, because right now this problem really only resides, and I'm not sure how many units there. I think he told us maybe there's 8 owners total or 6 owners total, but again, from a holistic, a watershed protection, looking at keeping sediments out of the bay and everything else, when I look at it from that standpoint, yeah, it's a project that has merit. But is it is isolated in the sense is that it is only affecting a very small percentage of our population, whereas if Section Street was being undermined, well, that would affect every citizen and every visitor to our city, and that's one of those things that becomes code red.
Right. Sorry for all the tough questions again.
That's okay.
Council, do y'all have any feeling on this? Any further questions for Richard?
I'd like us to start looking into the legalities of it and see if we see exactly what that has to look like. Because I frankly think it's a positive idea.
Council President, I like it. I do think maybe, I wouldn't mind if the city attorney could take a look at that to see if there's a vehicle by which the property owner could undertake the project, because it'd probably be completed much sooner, with all the caveats that Richard stated. And your point about the yacht club, but that's the first project I thought of that is an example of, I think if it's so large, we have to do it. But I also have seen things undertaken by single tax where we partnered, I think some, maybe even at the soccer fields, they took over a project, they did it, they built it, and then,
The museum.
yeah, gave it back to us or something.
They took it back and gave it back.
Right. But there's some things there's some maneuvering you could do, and it's all, kind of voodoo, but sometimes you can do that legally.
Councilman Boone, did you have any?
Well, I've always felt that you're asking the question, if you walked around, would you think that this was a project that needed to be done? I've always felt that, to be quite honest with you. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we dropped that track code down in that gully and did the initial work back in the 80s, in that back part. And I did it, and I can remember looking at that gully, and I was thinking, it's a pretty good range. This may be a problem. I've always looked at the condo there, thinking that may, that could be a real problem. And I used to have a buddy there. When Sally did hit, they were talking about taking those stumps and everything. I said, for God's sake, whatever you do not touch the side of that wall. If those stumps are there, the tree's there, leave everything right there. Don't touch it. Because, and I think this is, because it is our property, I truly feel it would be a benefit for the city overall.
Well,
Especially, this is good as a grant to me, 50 cents on a dollar.
well, it sounds like Richard and Marcus, if y'all want to maybe connect and see if there's an avenue for the property owners to manage it, great. If not, if the city needs to manage it, which is what we think will be the case, maybe put something together, see if we can't look at trying to work something out on that.
Thank you.
Marcus, I would also like to see, I guess, the ruling on Spanish Fort and how they handled that, because I don't feel like this is the last time that we're going to see some of these issues. So just to know.
And then
Okay.
I'll let you know, both. My thought is on the letting him manage it and do it, I think it's gonna have to come back to us, because even our split is gonna be more than the bid amount anyway.
Yeah.
You can't split, you can't split project amounts and come under bid
Right.
anyway, so I think we're gonna have to go, you'd have to go out to bid as a public works project, and whether he contributes to it or not, that's,
Okay.
it's kinda like what we did for the marina, they'd
Mhm.
already gone out and gotten quotes and everything, we're ready to go, and we were like, we can't do that.
Right.
That's my.
Sounds like it.
Can you do a temporary easement, temporary deed, something like that? I mean, that's kind of crazy, but I don't know.
I don't know if we want to jump. I mean, it'd be nice to not have to put it on Richard and them, but I don't know if we want to jump through all that. to try
Maybe
to
more
get it. Yeah.
effort than it's worth, but there's some creative ways to do that, I think.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Jessica, to discuss hazard mitigation grant opportunities for disaster recovery 4503 HMGP funding.
Yes, so
COVID-19 funding.
Eric covered the first one, which was Fairfield. Thank you, Eric. The second opportunity we have for this is a way for us to replace the current warning system that we have. As you know, our warning system, we test it once a month on Tuesdays, but it is currently triggered by lightning, which makes it completely inefficient. So it can go off at any time. There's not really a hazard for it to be going off for. People begin to not take it very seriously. It's not very effective for us. It is a World War II era siren that we would need to replace. I've been working with Jeff, this is actually Jeff's project, so he may want to speak to it, but the grant amount, or the project amount is $43,260, because this is a FEMA grant. There is a 25% match to that. So our match would be $10,815. What we would do is do street sound system, and Jeff, would you like to talk about how the street sound system is implemented, or do you want me to do it? I'm sorry.
The current system?
No, the new one, that we would be replacing what we currently have with. Thank you.
So this system, we would cover pretty much the entire central business district. About each street, we would probably add 2 to 3 different speaker systems. And so what this does is during the normal day, it can play music. But in the event of an emergency, we can alert folks that there's a potential problem. Another benefit, if we have a like the Arts and Crafts Festival, and there's a missing child, we can put out an alert, say, hey, there's a missing child, blue jeans, blue shirt, be on the lookout if you see this person, that type of thing. So what's good about it too is we could start off with the central business district and expand from there. So if we want to add alert system down at the pier, we could just add on to it. If we want to expand to the rec centers or to the soccer fields, we could do that as well. So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the current system, our city employees refer to it as Big Bertha. It's over there behind the Welcome Center. We had to go and shut it off during Sally. We had to get out there in the storm and actually go shut it off because it was going off every few minutes. The current I think the current test that we had this past Tuesday failed, so we've got to go and, we don't have a working system right now. I've got to bring in, Motorola to help assist, fixing the current issue that we have with it right now. It's just a very old system.
That's been one of the things that I wanted to look at in downtown is expanding the speaker system. Everybody knows that when we're doing an event downtown, or if you're using it for notification, that it's not very effective. It doesn't cover all of downtown. So that's something that we have been looking at anyway. And when we looked at this grant again, Jessica went and did some research to see what kind of projects were being awarded. So this does have a success rate with this grant. It has been awarded to another community. So we felt like this was a good opportunity to be able to, look at this, be able to expand our current system, be able to use it for emergency notifications, and, only pay a portion of the cost. So.
Okay. Councilman, any questions?
Yes.
Jeff?
I think it's a great way to pay for some speakers that could be used for some emergency notifications, but, and other uses. But do we have the alert system, I'm thinking of the Amber Alert, like if we have a tornado warning in our area though, is that something that we have push-through notifications for that now? Because the speakers are only gonna reach people that are on the street, that are within earshot, or whether you're at the pier or whatever. It's not gonna reach the vast majority of people. So we still have push notifications for that, right?
We do. We have push notifications. On the app, it's connected to the National Weather Service.
Okay.
We do have policies in place for when we activate the siren. If you have a storm with 60 mile an hour.
Won't replace any of that.
It won't replace any of
We're gonna get rid of the
that.
siren though, right?
Correct. It would be another siren, and it would be expanded in the downtown area. And like Jeff said, you could expand it to the pier, you could run it to maybe the rec center. So, because right now, where I live, I can hear the siren from downtown. So I think expanding the footprint of it, you would cover a wider area of people who are able to hear that siren.
I think that, growing up in a small town in the South, most small towns, I know maybe in large cities, had the sirens. We knew if it went off, there was a tornado warning. And so as long as we still have, like a push notification and ways that people can be alerted other than just the speakers.
Yeah.
I think all of us probably.
I think we probably all do, but
Yeah, if a storm comes up, every one of our cell phones are going off.
so it's a good way to get some speakers.
The other thing to remember too is not everybody that's downtown is from Fairhope, and so if you come from out of town, your phone's not always geared towards the Weather Channel for this zip code. So this is to protect the person that's from out of town, the visitor, that if they're in the downtown area, they'll be alerted no matter what. But
And the music will sound really good.
music will sound awesome.
All right, any other questions for Jeff or Jessica? All right, sounds
Thank you.
good.
While I'm here, do you want to go ahead and cover agenda item number 6, which is the safe room grant, or do you want to
Yeah.
wait?
Should probably go ahead and cover that.
Okay, so let me hand these to you guys.
Thank you, ma'am.
So our Safe Room grant, we came to you about applying for this back last spring. We had Eddie Culpepper was here. He is under contract to develop that application for us. The application has been developed. This included quite a bit of engineering services, some architectural services. It's an extensive application, and in completing that application, the estimated amount for the grant application is about $500,000 more than what we originally expected it to be. So that project comes in at 1.841 and some change million, which makes our match is 25% of that. However, we do have something really great working for us, and that's the property at Pecan, where we're planning to locate this safe room. We got the appraisal for that back, and we can use that money as a credit toward what our match is. That appraisal came back at $130,500, so that would take our match down to what you see on the agenda tonight, which is $329,929. So I'd love to answer any questions you have. I know we are hitting over what we originally estimated. I also know that building costs are incredibly high right now, so.
I know we agree, we did put maybe the former amount in the budget for this year, though? Yeah, so this is,
Under budget, I guess.
Yeah, it is in the budget. Also, we don't expect this to hit if the application is due on Saturday. So if we are awarded this, it's probably going to be 12 to 18 months before we begin to see any kind of draws on that at all.
did that, saving some of that money by being able to use the in-kind property appraised value and bringing that match down? And look, I support it either way, but does that 329.9 get us, is that in the ballpark of the budgeted amount?
I think we,
Because I know costs went up, but that, I don't know that that was anticipated, so that brought it down, right?
To be honest, I don't remember that amount, but I can go pull it. I can pull it.
in our original match.
It won't change my vote. I was just curious if we wound up coming in.
Yeah, well, the original match would have been 325,000 less whatever the property appraisal was, which we did not have in at the time that we began this application
So
development.
roughly $4,000 more.
Okay, so about 5,000.
The other thing too, I just want to remind everybody, is this will house 75 people. That's what this is geared for. You can only put temporary furniture in a safe room. You can't put any kind of permanent fixtures in there, but this will be one of the largest facilities that we have, which would be able to hold training for all of Public Works, all the police department. So it is large enough to be able to use training. You just cannot also put permanent furniture there. So we will have some uses for this building outside of, just for a safe room. We obviously, won't use it all the time, but there is some other uses to it other than just the safe room. So people don't just think that we're just using it, in the event of a storm.
Well, that would make too much sense to be able to use it for more than once every 15 years.
All right. Any other questions for Jessica while she's here?
Thank y'all.
All right, thank you. All right, item number 4 on the work session agenda is a discussion of janitorial services.
Council President, Council, George Ladd, my Assistant Director, he has been over our custodial operations, so I'm going to hand it off to him. He's the one who's worked on this so hard, and he can kind of go through it, but just a couple of primers before he gets started. We're only discussing, we have part-timers that do janitorial services after hours. The biggest challenge we probably turn that staff over on average of once a year, meaning it's hard to retain people. And we're getting inconsistent services, and it's become problematic, and that's kind of the prompting to look at this. So, thank you.
So as Richard said, if you want to turn to the cost analysis page that in the pamphlet that's been given to y'all for this, should be like the 3rd page. It kind of gives you a little cost breakdown of where we're at currently and what the cost is for the janitorial services. And I wanted to point out a few items on that.
Where are we
I
looking?
don't have,
Item number 10 on the agenda.
oh, okay.
So in the cost analysis, at the top of the page, there's janitorial in-house services, and it gives you the cost of the 5 employees that work for us part-time as of right now, or actually, right now, I've currently only got 3 of them, and one of them is supposed to be going out for extended medical leave for 6 to 8 weeks here, so I'll only be down to 2 employees. But that's what, if all 5 positions were filled right now, that is $61,951 is what I'd be paying in salaries. And then in taxes, as you can see below that, and workman's comp. Now, when you get down to the in-house supplies, this number is skewed. It's not really accurate. If Corey looked into it, and if you went by this number, we only used 21 rolls of toilet paper this year. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how skewed the number is. It's pretty far off. So I would say that number is almost doubled, if not more, which gives you a total cost, even with that number, of $71,000. And then if you jump down to the bottom, below the actual contractual service, this bid is also covering, which our part-time employees do not do. We have to contract this out, whether it's through this contract service or whether it's with me putting out for bid. We do carpet cleaning typically 2 times a year, and we do floor waxing and cleaning typically 1 time a year. And carpet cleaning costs roughly $8,000 to do, and waxing costs $14,000. So if you take those 2 numbers and add them on top of the annual in-house labor cost and supplies, I mean, you're coming out.
We're coming out 15,000 ahead.
Right.
If you figure that we would have to pay for that outsourced.
Yes.
So how many cleaning, is this, our in-house cleaners are there they clean every day, right?
Yes, sir. That's
Is
correct.
this, how often will these people be
Same,
cleaning?
same thing, every day.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Sounds like a win,
Yeah.
probably. So 15,000 cheaper and probably more.
Probably
Guess
more
more
than that. If you
consistency.
could, if you had a better number on the supplies, it'd actually probably be even better.
Gotcha. Okay.
Sounds good.
Council, any questions?
Pleasantly surprised, George.
Yeah, and this would be City Hall, the museum, all of the buildings at the warehouse, and the mechanic shop.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good.
Sounds good.
So this is a fixed contract?
Yes, sir, we've already
That's
put it,
amazing.
I think we put it out for bid in September, I think. And Service Master is the lowest bidder.
All right. Sounds good.
Can't beat it.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome.
And that's on the actual council agenda tonight. I just asked if they discussed it in the work session in case anybody had questions, to get
Right.
them out of the way. Because I know everyone wants to get out here tonight. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Something going on?
Not that I'm aware
Not for
of.
some of y'all.
Maybe, maybe not.
All right, I know Councilman Burrell had to step out for a few minutes at this time. We go over committee updates. Councilman Martin?
I have none.
Councilman Robinson?
I don't think I have any either.
Councilman Boone?
All I have is a harbor board meeting on Wednesday at 4:30, and I won't be able to attend, but Brother Jack will, Captain Jack Durrell will be attending in my place.
There was a public commission meeting the mayor attended in my place where she was there. I think John Wilson was there and gave some good information as far as accounting information, as far as how we're gonna break down the monies in the schools.
Okay.
And I think that's a good thing because it's time for us to have a better relationship between us, our school system, and the county as far as our city schools are concerned. So that's an
You did a
update.
great job
Yeah.
with that presentation
Yeah.
and being able
Very
to
good.
Capture the financials and really show the commission, you know, what monies are being collected, what they're being spent on, they could roll over. So it was a great presentation. You did a good job.
And hopefully we'll be rolling off of that 300 that we're spending.
Yeah, I think that's
And
1 or
2 years.
2 more years. Okay.
And we should have some reserves. I mean, we made more this year in Avalarum, so we have a pretty good little pin that we can put in reserves. And the idea is, how do we spend that correctly and prudently?
Excellent. Well, thank you for that update. I have no committee updates, so at this time, we'll go to department head updates, and we'll also cover agenda items at the same time. So or we could just go through the agenda, and then y'all, if you've got something else to add to it, you can go with that. Mayor, first one yours. Let's see. Avenue Insights and Analytics, business license. Who's handling it? Oh, Kim, I'm sorry.
This is a renewal of a company that actually follows up on business license. They find the businesses that currently do not have business license, and they'll actually collect that, and then that brings us from years forward that we'll be collecting in the roll. So it's a renewal.
Okay. And do you have any other items on the agenda tonight? That's it? All right, the next one, Jessica just covered that. Let's see. Item number 7, Quail Creek. Richard, is that you?
Yes, sir. Council President, members of council, this is kind of it's housekeeping. It's required. This is closing out this project, and when we were doing that work that included replacing the golf cart crossing there between holes number 2 and 3, the damage of some of the cart trail leading away to the approach and departure of that new crossing was worse than anticipated. We had a contractor, we had a contract price. We ended up doing about 60 linear extra additional feet of replacement there. The project ran under a little bit, but the extra concrete ran over, and so in order to close out the contract and balance the budget, we are requesting a change order of a total of $4,547.27 to be able to close this project out. And it was a good value that we got of getting that cart path replaced.
Okay, any other items for you on the agenda tonight?
I've got my fingerprints a little bit on number 8, but really it's Jason's baby. But I do want to make sure you understand this. During the time of this project's inception and awarding, and then the utility going through some standards change, is they upgraded their standard to the type of water line to use, and it was thought that at this point in the project, continuing on from a good junction point, was to upgrade to that, which is an increase in cost, but it's a better material. And as I told the mayor is aware of this project has a pretty good contingency in it. Our anticipation is this money will never be used because that contingency should have it. But since it is a material change, it's proper to do a change order. So council has authorized the amendment of that contract. And I have number 9, which I'm excited about. That is the awarding the bid for Arts Alley, our downtown transit hub project that we've talked about every year for at least 4.5 now. It is coming to a fruition, and I think there is a little bit of language in there is that we have been authorized by our funding source, FTA, to let the project, which y'all are doing tonight, but ultimately it will not move forward until there is their official project authorization, which we have given them everything that they need. There are no objections, but it's one of those things is you've got to wait for the federal government to work as the federal government, but they want us to go ahead and complete the letting process, so we're excited about that. I will tell you that the cost is about $84,000 over the independent cost estimate that this was based on, which was completed almost a year and a half ago. So based upon a $1 million plus project, $84,000 is probably within the margin of inflation that we've seen in the last 18 months. Number 10, George has already discussed, and then number 12 is pretty easy one, just 2 pickup trucks for Public Works. And my only report is that this morning we received project authorization for the turn lanes and signal improvements at Gayfer Road and Greeno, US 98. So that project is being handed off to purchasing to go out for bids. We're excited about that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's see. Okay, number 10 was George. Number 11, okay, Chief, she's not here. Okay, well, Mayor can probably cover that one if needed. That's for the police department, number 11. Number 12 was Richard. Let's see, 13, Jade, would that be you?
Coming before y'all tonight, I asked for some help. We've got a truck that's been down since before I've gotten here. The truck we use for doing tree trimming, and we're wanting to add 2 tree trimming operators that were budgeted, but until we get the truck fixed, we cannot go forward with that. The problem with the truck is the lift cylinder between the top boom and the bottom boom sheared off from the boom. And we talked with the manufacturer, which is Terex, to find out what would be best way to repair that, and they have recommended replacing the outer sheath of the upper boom and making painting the boom and testing. And the cost of that is going to be $16,365.80. And that would be us taking it to Birmingham to Terex themselves to have it fixed.
Okay. All right, any questions on that, council members?
Do you have to trailer to that, or can you drive it?
No, sir, it can be driven. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good.
All right. Sounds good.
As far as updates,
Yes,
we
sir.
are back working on Morphe. It is moving ahead. We do have a meeting with Stewart Engineering and the contractor for January the 21st, start reviewing the 46 to 12 work. So hopefully we will get going on that within the next 30 to 40 days, depending on material delivery. Also, we got our new licensed electrician, Ben Patterson. He started today as well.
All right, excellent.
Excellent. Ben Patterson?
Yes.
Very good.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Jason, didn't mean to skip over you since Richard already covered that, but you want to tell everybody how to look out for your daughter tonight on television? All right. Okay. Well, keep your eyes peeled. You might see her. His daughter is in the color guard, correct, for Alabama? Or color guard, yeah, for University of Alabama. So. Number 14 is an appointment to Industrial Development Board. Jack will handle that. We've got 2 walk-on items to the council agenda, if y'all would. One is the hold harmless. We discussed that would be resolution. That would be item number 15, and that is for the work being done down at Pecan and Pier. So we discussed that in the work session. And then item number 16 will be also walk on, and this is from Ultimate XP to provide COVID testing, and Councilman Martin can speak to this if y'all have any questions. Do you want to give a quick overview of that now?
Sure. This is just the opportunity that we have to have rapid tests in our community for people to be able to be tested for COVID on the spot instead of having to go to the urgent care centers. I'm sure we have a lot of employees that are not able to get into the urgent care centers along with family members. With these kits, they can come by a testing site and they can do it rapidly, and then give them an immediate test. After that, they can take a test that they can send off that does a more specificity and specification test as far as the results. But I think this is just something good that the community has. A lot of people do not have this, so we're blessed to get these tests.
All right, thank you, sir. And then we do have executive session tonight, and department heads, if I didn't call you up here because you didn't have anything on the agenda, if you've got anything you want to update us on, I was just trying to cover the agenda real quick so we could move the meeting along tonight. But Hunter, did you have any updates? You good? Okay. There's good. Paige? Nothing? Yeah, Chief, I know you had some elections.
Yes, sir.
The fire department held their annual elections last week, and I was the re-elected chief.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
Thank you. David Thomas and Dalton Combs were re-elected as the assistant chiefs. Mark Palucci remained the treasurer, and Chris Weinberg is the secretary, and that's the board of directors also for 2022. So.
All right. Well, congratulations to all y'all.
We'll be up next council meeting to introduce everybody.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, did you have anything extra or not? Any updates? All right. Terry, I can't even see you. You good? All right. Pat, did you have anything?
We had a great baseball tournament this past weekend, 190 players.
Yes.
I was trying to figure out what all those people were doing. I didn't realize that's what that was. Okay.
Yeah, that was very interesting, must say.
Well, I was at Valana on Saturday and it was packed.
Yes. That was
Disc golf?
It's Sunday, I was there Sunday.
Disc golf?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, if y'all are good with it, let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back at 6 o'clock to convene the council meeting.
Hey, bud, how you doing?